Okay, so I'm here with Denis Duverne, who's the CEO of AXA, a global insurer and asset manager based in France. And we're going to talk about the Investor Summit on Climate Risk, organised by Ceres and the UN. Welcome, Mr. Duverne.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so after COP21, there's been a lot more certainty that the world is transitioning to a low carbon economy. As an investor, where have you seen opportunities in this signal?
So for us, the opportunity continues to be in green bonds and infrastructure investments. We have committed last year to multiply by a factor of 3 our green bond investments to 3 billion.
Mm-hmm.
We've been actively lobbying the European regulators to make sure that the capital charge in our solvency regime, in our capital regime in Europe called Solvency II,
Mm-hmm.
be more accommodative to infrastructure investments, which were heavily penalized, and we have obtained a move in the right direction on that front. So green bond and infrastructure are a big opportunity for us.
Is there policy risk in countries such as Africa?
There is policy risk everywhere. There is
Yes.
policy risk in mature markets as well as emerging markets. And in fact, on a number of infrastructure investments, there was policy risk in Europe in the last several years.
Okay.
So I would not make a distinction
Okay.
on that front between mature and emerging markets.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, and are there any barriers to investing in low carbon opportunities? It's quite a relatively new market.
It's still a relatively new market, and we need to take into account, as you said, policy risk.
Yeah.
We need to take into account the fact that there are not that many opportunities yet, so the sector is still in development. But when we see that there are more investments right now in renewable energies than in traditional energies, definitely this is an important sector for us to look at.
Okay. And earlier today we heard from the former Mayor of New York, Michael Bloomberg, who's heading up a very interesting new initiative, the Disclosure Task Force on Climate Risk. What's your view on that kind of issue? I mean, do you think corporates at the moment disclose enough around climate risk?
So we are very interested in this initiative. We have been disclosing our exposure to climate risk over the last 10 years as AXA, participating in the carbon disclosure project. And we have expanded our disclosure this year. I mean, last year and this year, we've just disclosed as part of the Montreal Pledge our carbon footprint on the large part of our balance sheet, bonds and equities. And so we are very much in favor of that. And Christian Timan, who is our head of strategy, sustainability and public affairs, is one of the 4 vice chairs of the task force chaired by Michael Bloomberg. Okay. On behalf of the Financial Stability Board. So we are actively engaged. We're one of the only insurer on the among the vice chairmen of this task force, and we will be very engaged. And we believe that disclosure is going to be a key ingredient to continuing the progress on this climate effort.
Yeah, because especially for the insurance sector, I can imagine that climate risk is pressing on your minds quite heavily.
For us, climate risk is not just an asset risk. It's first and foremost a liability risk, because we are insuring the goods and the lives of people who are exposed every day to the impacts of climate change. More frequent natural catastrophes being one of the many elements, but also pollution, risk to the health of people. So this is a topic that we have taken extremely seriously for many years, both with, I would say, collective engagements with the United Nations, but also individual engagement by making our own commitments in that field.
Okay, through green bonds and as such.
Green bonds, but also our recent decision to divest from our coal investments, the disclosures that we are making, the launch on the asset management side of new expertise in impact investing, in infrastructure investing, in green bonds. All of those efforts point to the same direction.
Yeah, because it's very interesting. We just heard the former Vice President of the US, Al Gore, call for divestment from very high carbon intensive assets. So you're already on that journey.
We're already on that journey, and I was very impressed by the efforts that is made now on the topic of stranded assets. because I believe that, I mean, we are a long-term investor. So when we invest in a bond, and bonds don't have the same liquidity as equities, we invest in 10-year bonds, 15-year bonds, 20-year bonds, and if the risk changes during that period, we will be exposed to those stranded assets. That's why we made that decision to divest from coal, and we divested 500 million euros in 2015 to get rid of our coal investments. And I believe that this topic of stranded assets will become more and more important. Al Gore at the lunch today was comparing the stranded energy assets to the subprime crisis of the previous decade. And I think it's a very good analogy, because it strikes you home that really this stranded assets issue of traditional energy investments might come to haunt many investors in the next decades.
Yeah. And kind of remaining on the same theme, how do you approach carbon or fossil fuel risk as an asset owner?
So we have a dual strategy. The first one was to avoid the stranded assets divestments that I've mentioned. The second one is the engagement. And we've divested from coal investments where the coal content was more than 50%. For between 30 and 50%, we have decided to engage with the companies to discuss what their strategy is to themselves decarbonize. So I think we have to take into account the fact that the whole industry is moving, and we want to accompany that transition and encourage it.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Do you have anything else to add about today? No. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks.